Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us for another live episode of the Back to the Bible broadcast. Mike Robertson here with you with Jordan and Reese. Fellas, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Micah. I'm very good.
I'm going to set you up. Man.
Whatever.
You're getting too eager.
No.
Jordan, how are you?
Good?
Don't answer. No, don't answer.
I'm going to set you up. That's not how it goes.
No, man.
You know how it goes.
I know, but that's how you set me up the first time. And then you're like, I'm going to set you up. And then I did it wrong the next time. You're like, man, I set you up.
I leave and I'm not a part of any of that. I'm just there having their own party over here.
None of it.
We'll argue about it. We'll argue about it in the truck.
Ladies, you're both beautiful.
This is how it goes. This is how it is when we're setting up, when we're getting prepped. All this back and forth. But we're glad you're able to be a part of it. So we've had ourselves a really good Lord's Day. Had a bunch of visitors today.
Yes.
That was really good, really encouraging. And so got to talk with one of them in depth afterwards. Know that he had some disagreements with some things that we were doing, presenting, teaching. But hey, that's fine. We said if we can set up a time to study it further, we'd like to do that. And so hopefully they'll come back. So we've had ourselves a good Lord's Day. Hope that you've had one as well and that you're ready for another hour's worth of Bible study. We are going to try to keep it to an hour because the analytics are telling us that we're losing people as we start going over an hour.
Yeah.
So, but hey, I know one of the things that's floating around right now. The Kansas City Chiefs were playing somebody in a playoff game. I don't know what's going on.
I don't watch soccer.
The Bible.
But apparently they were playing in sub-zero temperatures.
Yeah.
And so, but a bunch of people still went to the game.
Nice.
And then, so there's a bunch of preachers around town raising the questions like, okay, if you're going to go sit in sub-zero temperatures just to watch a game and however many hours long that it is, are you going to be at Bible study, this coming Sunday? Which there's some churches that didn't meet because it was too cold.
Well,
Some churches
that wasn't
because
us.
they were at the football
Yeah,
game.
they're at the football game. So there's a lot, there's a lot of things that we're able to look at. A lot of people, so right there, we have people in the community that are they're looking around and they're starting to gauge things of people's commitment. What are you really committed to?
Yeah.
People throwing a pigskin around or coming in worshiping God in fellowship with your brethren. But anyways, we are a live religious broadcast out of Montana. This is a broadcast presented to you by the Church of Christ of Lake County. We're the newest, oldest church in town. Newest because we've been in existence here for 3 years now, going on 4 this year, but we're the oldest church because we're the church you can read about in the Bible. And we'll have more to say about that as we get into our subject matter for this evening. You are welcome to come and visit with us if you have the chance. Want to say welcome to our MCAT viewers, our channel 189 out of Missoula. If you're watching on channel 189, you're watching a re-air. Saturday nights, 9:30 p.m. We're really thankful for that re-air. But be sure to catch us live Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. YouTube, and I believe Facebook is out. Is that right?
Facebook's not working.
All right.
Yeah, Facebook's not. I can't get it up.
Okay, that's fine. Did you make a post?
I did not.
All right,
Yes.
we'll ask Reese to do that for us. Point everybody over to YouTube, which they should already know by now. If Facebook's not up, then run over to YouTube. We have a new subscriber, which we actually have several new subscribers in the past week since we were live last, but one individual in particular allowed us to know his name.
Nice.
And when you do that, we'll give you a shout out. So we want to say welcome to Jimmy Downs, our newest subscriber as of 22 hours ago when I took a screenshot of
3 weeks ago.
of our channel. So thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for subscribing. Hopefully you have notifications on and you're watching live with us and that you're involved in our broadcast tonight. So what we're doing with this broadcast and everything else that we're involved with is we're wanting to have people get back to the Bible. Let's search the scriptures together. Be like those in Acts 17:11, that these were more noble than those in Thessalonica. That's a pretty good thing to have God and the Bible say about you, that you are a noble individual. That's of high caliber and high standard. How did they get this label? In that they received the word with all readiness of mind. You have to be a person who's willing to listen. That is a huge problem that we have in our society, in our community, that people are just moving around way too fast, and that when you try to talk to them, it's in one ear, out the other, or they just want to tell you what they have to say without hearing, the other side of it. But in receiving these things with all readiness of mind, being ready then to search the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. That is our guide. That's our standard. That is our rule to find out, okay, is what you're telling me the truth or not? And that's what we're wanting to get down to. We want to get down to the truth of the matter. Just simply giving the facts. And in knowing the facts and knowing the truth, Jesus said, you shall know the truth shall make you free. And that's what we're wanting to bring to this community, is what Jesus is offering, and that's freedom from sins. Acts 26:17. The work that Paul had set before him is the same thing that we're striving to do, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light, from the power of Satan unto God, and that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. A lot of people, they are still under darkness. They need to be brought to the light. They're still under the power of Satan. They need to be delivered from that and brought to the power of God. They need to still receive the forgiveness of their sins, that they can have hope in the inheritance that is eternal, and that being sanctified by faith. This is what we're trying to do, and this is not anything that is out of the ordinary, or shouldn't be out of the ordinary with the the realm that we're striving to work. You would think that here we are dealing with the Bible. John chapter 3, Jesus says to Nicodemus that we're trying to bring people to light in that context as well, but people love darkness. So here we have this constant battle that's raging between these two classes of people, light, darkness. We're not wanting anybody to be in darkness. We want you to come to the light. So with that, anything you guys want to add on that before we move on?
I concur.
All right. Sounds good?
We love you.
All
Listen.
Right. We do love you. That was one of our previous passages, but we're changing things up. And what we're trying to do, no, we're kind of toning down on that. Kind of pulling it back. They're not receiving. They're not receiving it like they should. So you don't get as much. We're offering God's simple plan for salvation. Acts 3:22. We're told that you're needing to hear this gospel message. John 8:24. We're told that you need to believe this gospel message. Luke 13:3. Jesus said, "Except you repent, you shall likewise perish." John 12:42. We are commanded that we're needing to confess in Him as being the Son of God. In Acts 2:38. That we have those repenting and being baptized for the remission of their sins. And then after becoming a child of God, becoming a Christian, now you have the great privilege and honor to live faithfully. Strive to be obedient until death. And that's found in Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10. So we're moving on to episode 93, Doctor, Tell Us the Truth, part 2. This is part 2 because we used last week. We were going to do this last week, but we did last week to look at the video because it was so good, had a lot of good, really good information in it, and it definitely set the stage to soften the delivery, I suppose, of what we're going to go into tonight. Soften the blow. That's a good way to look at it, because what we're going to do tonight is we're going to start dissecting one of Dr. Nace's blog articles. But he's already set the tone for us, and we're going to give ourselves a little refresher here, going back to his New Year's sermon, and that, in fact, you know what? There's a lot of deception that's out there. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be a Christian, if you're going to walk in the light, you can't walk in deception. You cannot be deceived. So you need to remove that. And being involved in removing that is going to have to take exposing error. So let's let him set this up, and then we'll jump into a dissection of his article.
And I think this is what Paul is telling us to avoid. Don't be deceived by the false promises. He says that this deception brings the wrath of God upon the sons of disobedience. In other words, being deceived is not an excuse that will keep a person out of hell. Like all those people that are in hell because of their listening and adhering to false prophets have no excuse. Remember, if you were here for Contenders, was it 2 weeks ago or last week or something? We talked about Matthew chapter 7. Jesus says, on that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not do good works in your name? And he says, and then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I mean, that's a sobering thing for Jesus to say.
All right, so here he's setting the tone. Deception is not an excuse. If you're going to be deceived, there's no excuse for that because we have God's word, therefore we have the truth on the matter. Search the scriptures, study to show yourself approved. That is a vital point because as we are out and trying to bring people to the truth, remove them from darkness into light, as we catch people in positions where they have in fact been deceived, oftentimes the rebuttal is, or the remark is given, well, we'll figure that out when we're over there. No, you're not going to be able to do that. And I at least appreciate Dr. Nace being willing to say that that is not how this is going to play out. That in fact, you have got to figure this information out here. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to escape hell. You're not going to be able to claim ignorance. Acts 17:30. The times of ignorance God winked at, but now he commands all men everywhere to repent. That's universal. Nobody is exempt. So this is setting the stage, and it's not just coming from us. It's coming from Dr. Nace over at Terrace Lake, and that because he's upholding what the scriptures say on this point. Now, as to how hard fast he's going to be on that rule, he's a bit wishy-washy, and that's where we're going to be going. So, anything you guys want to tack onto that before we move on to the next section of his video?
Just gonna say he's sharing the hate with us because people are gonna get mad at you too. So thank you, I appreciate
Well,
it.
he doesn't uphold it though fully. He does say it, but then he's like, he's wishy-washy.
Kind of,
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of
we'll figure it out later.
pulls it back. He uses vague examples in the sermon and everything like that. But setting that to the side, everything else is really good. We'll come in with the finer points.
And finally, walking as children of the light is, number 4, exposing the unfruitful works of darkness. And when you come to the point where you can identify an unfruitful work of darkness, how do you expose it? I think is the question. How do you expose it? And first of all, I think that to expose the unfruitful works of darkness is to hold people in the highest regard. To expose the unfruitful works of darkness is to hold people in the highest regard. In other words, I think to expose evil, to expose unfruitful works, to expose false prophets, to expose false teaching is of the highest virtue, which I would argue is truth, right? You could say love is the highest virtue, but I could always say, is that true? Right? And that kind of puts truth over that in a sense. I know we could argue about this philosophically forever, right? But man, I just can't get past that idea. So I think the truth, I think love and the truth go together hand in hand. And this is why I think Paul says exposing the unfruitful works of darkness, without truth, there is no love, at least in some regard, in some sense. But when you come to the point where you can identify an unfruitful work of darkness, if someone is believing that they are going to heaven and believe all these false ideas against which the Lord will say, "Depart from me, I never knew you," then to expose them, I think, is to love people.
All right, we could not agree more. And we hope that Dr. Nace really means that, because now we're going to actually be involved in doing the very thing that he says that we're supposed to do if we actually love people. That's exposing false ideas, deceptions that are out there. And so the one that we're wanting to deal with this evening is this Defense of Denominations by Dr. Nace Howell over on his blog, Apologetics and Evidence. It's amazing how it is that in that clip, he says, there's all these false ideas out there. Well, what? So again, we're not able to get any specifics from Dr. Nace, but we're willing to go ahead and take aim at some of these and address some of these really big ones. What you got?
I was just thinking, when you make it vague, it's like, well, everyone makes it sound like everyone understands, everyone's gone through these things. There's these big old things out there that everyone's going to get. And it's like, okay, Jordan's a carpenter, you're a preacher. It's like he goes and says something about a house. Oh, you know how houses are built like this.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I know.
Yeah, you're supposed to understand. It's like everyone in the audience isn't going to get that. So
yeah, I know what you're talking about, but explain it for them.
Yeah, hey, go ahead. Explain it. Explain it in fine detail, as if I was 4 years old. Go ahead. So that's just all I got, is the further, as we're going to dissect and go through, okay, well, here's some big things. That's just kind of what came to my mind to further go on what he said is, there's things out there. It's like, okay, what kind of things? Well, okay, I guess I know. So
well, the reason we met Nace, Dr. Nace, is because we were being very specific about born in sin is not in the Bible. Change my mind. And we're like, boom, right? Or denominations are not in the Bible, whatever. And so that's why, we're no one's friend, even though we're your best friend. But then he comes out to be like, well, I'm this, trudging or going, paving the way for everybody, but he doesn't put any specifics on it. There's nothing except for Mormonism, because everyone can pick on them. And it's like, well,
And that's a really good point right there, Jordan, in that, okay, if you're wanting to have people engage with you and interact with you, you've got to deal with specifics.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What got Dr. Nace to come over to talk to us was our signs was something very specific. Why is it that he's writing about the Church of Christ in his blog? How is it that we're getting these, these kinds of back and forths, even though we would like something in person? We're still trying to get that. How are we able to get this? Well, it's because we're taking aim.
Yeah.
And we're hitting a very specific target, and people just cannot ignore it. So in the chat, we have Rob Trevino saying that he's here. Thank you, Brother Rob.
Hello.
Glad you're watching tonight. Mitch from North Carolina says greetings from Burlington, NC, and has a heart emoji.
Hello.
Love you. Jeremy Ferguson, Reese, CFC does that too. They say all the time, everyone knows this. Aha. So that's a really good comment.
I was going to say something like that too.
Because it's a realization that as we're making these statements about denominationalism, the same thing is going on in our brotherhood too.
Yes.
There's a really big problem with preachers, gospel preachers, generalizing, talking in vague terms, and it's just, well, they're going to pick it up. No, they're not. They are not going to pick it up. That's one of the major points of the preaching school that I went to that I cannot recommend made to us, was that do not underestimate how much your audience does not know. If you're needing to spell something out, spell it out. Well, because they're not going to pick it up.
I'm sure our audience knows that, though.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, we got some smart cookies out there.
Which there's going to be more on that next week in our Bible study. Yes, Jesus spelling stuff out
That's
to
right.
the woman at the well.
That's right.
Hey,
John chapter 4.
I'm so excited.
I just can't hide it. All right, so here we are to the article. The reason I write this, Dr. Nace says, because I frequently hear members from the Church of Christ crying out that Christian denominations are evil and such. Now that makes me wonder, how often is he actually watching our broadcasts?
I don't know. He should subscribe.
He should. And then we would know. And I have recently posted.
We mentioned his name.
Yeah. But we only mention his name because he's putting out good information. Most of the time. Some of it is kind of rough. But
questionable
to me. If he subscribed, we would mention his name.
I got it. So he says, I have recently posted on the Apologetics and Evidence Facebook page that Mormonism is not a Christian denomination and received some disgruntled comments from a few people over it. I will argue that denominations are biblical and that groups of people such as the Church of Christ who argue against such are biblically in error. Now, again, we're dealing with generalities here. So does this, in being biblically in error, does that mean that we're lost? Now, I mean, that's fine, because as he's saying in his sermon, the reason why he's putting this article out is to expose us a false idea, and that in doing that, you're actually holding people in high regard. And I believe that 100%, because to do that shows that you care about them. Hey, I don't want you to just go on believing this when it's not correct, because as he said in his sermon, you're not going to go to heaven that way, holding on to a false idea. So I appreciate that with Dr. Nace, that we're on equal footing with each other. He views us this way. We view him the same way, that your view of denominationalism, division, is incorrect. And that is, in fact, unbiblical, and that's going to cause people to be lost. Not anything personal against you. As far as I know, in my interactions with Dr. Nace, he's an okay guy. So we're setting personality to the side. Let's just simply view the arguments here. So that's what we're going to do with this article. So again, he takes aim at Mormonism as not being a Christian denomination, but he's going to end up undoing himself here in just a moment. But we're going to deal with this point by point. What we have, the first problem that we have in the article is by his wording about the Church of Christ crying out that Christian denominations are evil and such. This is an assumption by equivocation. Would you guys like to know what that is?
No,
you know what it is. You got it?
Yeah,
okay.
the whole audience knows.
Okay.
Spell it.
All right.
Go ahead. Explain it for the audience.
So the idea of a Christian denomination, there's no such thing. Christianity is its own set thing. And anything outside of that, of what Christianity is no longer Christianity. So the problem that we have, not just with Dr. Nace, but it's I need to stop saying denominational because we're fixing to get to that point. The problem that we have with the division that's in our community is because we're not working with the same definitions. And that's what an equivocation is that you are using a word in one sense, or with one definition one way, but then using it in a different way in a separate way. So here's an example of an equivocation. We must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately.
I understand.
That's an equivocation. The word hang has a different definition in the different sections of this quote. Hanging together as in staying close together, staying camaraderie.
Fighting together.
The second, by being strung up in a tree. That's a pretty good quote.
Yeah.
That's why Benjamin Franklin's my favorite president. So here we have equivocation being used, it's being used in humor to prove a point. But that's the exact same thing that we have going on with this idea of, Christian denomination. Christian divisions. And the Church of Christ saying that these are evil and such. Well, okay, if we're using that definition, then yes, division is evil. Division is wrong. We're not supposed to be dividing. We're supposed to be staying united. But yet, in view of them but altering and changing the definition to simply being, I'm trying to think how Merriam-Webster actually defines it. It's just any organization that has a religious belief. That's a denomination.
He pretty much says it coming up.
Okay, yeah, that's right, in his own definition. So, but what we have here in this idea of, Christian denomination, that's like the CFL trying to come over to the NFL and saying, oh yeah, we're like you. You guys know what the CFL is?
I don't play basketball.
Okay.
Canada.
Okay, so the CFL is the Canadian Football League. And that's like the Canadian Football League trying to come over and saying, yeah, we're just like the NFL. But the size of their field is different.
Soccer.
The goalpost, the field goal post is put in different positions. They actually play with 12 players, and the NFL plays with 11.
Oh, well.
So there's all of these differences. And do we honestly think that anybody in the NFL is like, oh yeah, the CFL is just like us? No, they're not. We play with the same ball. We got similar uniforms. We wear helmets. You wear helmets. That does not make us the same. The NFL is its own separate institution that has its own, what's the word?
Rules?
Yeah, well, it has its own rules, but it has its own benefits. And it has its own...
concussions.
Yeah. So there's all these differences, and you don't get to look at these and like, well, there's these similarities, so therefore they are the same organization. These are two separate organizations. They have separate rules, and of course, the Canadian Football League is much more polite than the NFL is. But we look at that and we understand it. Yes, there are similarities, but these similarities do not make you the same. That's like trying to say dogs and cats are the same because they all have 4 legs, they have fur, and they have tails. Just because they have those similarities doesn't make them the same. Try to mate a dog with a cat and see how that goes.
A hyena.
They're not the same. And on top of that, cats are actually descended from snakes. So you can study that on your own. Here's what we're needing to do.
I believe it. They're evil.
If we are going to have a proper discussion on this, then we need to use the rules as set out in 1 Peter 4 and verse 11. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. Denomination is not used once in the scriptures. And as we said, man has altered the definition. So, Jordan, before we even get there, just go ahead and read his definition so as to help us.
Well,
find it.
First, what even is a denomination? I would say, emphasis on I would say, a denomination is any body of believers of the biblical Jesus who are in agreement with essential doctrines of Christianity.
All right, so that's a very loose, modern definition for denominationalism. You go back in history, in older dictionaries, that's nowhere close to being the definition that you have. But that's the alteration that has come into play that has made all of this supposedly okay. Well, here's the definition of it, but that's a modern definition. If we are actually going to come to terms on this, then let's use biblical terms and let's stop using euphemisms when we're trying to describe these things. The Bible, in describing these kinds of separations, uses words like heresy. That's a party, or abstractly, a disunion or a sect. Now, that is a better word than denomination. Mm-hmm. A party, disunion. Look at our community. There is no harmony, there is no unity amongst these different organizations. But yet, Dr. Nace is trying to defend that because he's using a unbiblical word and definition. The Bible also uses the word division, which is from the Greek word schisma, a split or a gap. Schism, a division, rent, a schism once again. And a schism is no little thing. This is the idea of like breaking a bone in this idea of division. That's painful. It hurts the body. It causes the body to be less productive, so on and so forth. So if we're then going to use these kind of words, and we go back to Dr. Nace's article, does it now not make better sense? That kind of was confusing coming out as I was saying it.
Audience knows what you're talking about.
It should make more sense as to why the Church of Christ, us, would be crying out that heresies and divisions are evil and such. Because when those words are used in biblical context, they are always used negatively.
So he's doing that whole thing where a news reporter's like, so when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what okay. It's like, well, if I answer that, it implies that I started. So it's like for him to say, they're crying out against these Christians. Like, no. From the get, we're not calling them Christians.
Right.
Good. Putting it in layman terms.
Exactly.
For the carpenters out there.
There you go. That's like the CFL trying to say, oh, no, we're the NFL. No, you are the Canadian Football League. We are the National Football League. Completely different organizations. Different parties. But that right there just shows, so what is they're actually trying to do? Mm-hmm. They're trying to sneak their way in the back door without actually having to be a part of the party or the organization.
While bringing us down to them.
While trying to bring us down onto their level, onto their standards. So here's what we have. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 10. Here's what the Bible has to say about divisions. Now I beseech you, this is Paul writing to the church of God at Corinth. Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that ye all speak the same thing, that there be no divisions among you. But yet we have Dr. Nace writing an article in defense of divisions. Now he can say denomination, but denomination is not a good fit. Let's use biblical terms. He is in defense of divisions. While yet Paul is writing to this church, and he says to them, there should be no divisions, but you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. Which that's a good connection back to the Gus Nichols, Guy Woods discussion, where even some of our own brethren are starting to go down the lane of heresy and by saying, well, we can't agree on everything all the time. But yet here's Paul, and he's making statements like this. Oh, you need to be perfectly joined together in the same mind, in the same judgment. Sounds like we need to be getting on the same page. Mm-hmm. But even now our own brethren are starting to head down that track and just, it's easier to go along, get along.
I'm just thinking of that perfectly joined together, that word perfect. If we had a perfect sacrifice in the definition of how people are using, this, we can't agree on everything. Well, we had somewhat of a perfect sacrifice. It's like, no, you need this to be what it is. Mm-hmm. If not, no one's making it to heaven.
All right, that's good. Jordan, got anything?
No, can't beat that.
All right, that's good. Let's go to the chat here. Our brother Mitch says a house denominationalized. Speaking in tongues now. A house denominationalized shall fall. So there again, a house divided. And that's the original definition. Denominated is the separation of like currency. Mm-hmm. You've got these different forms of currency. Jeremy Ferguson says, let's go Lions. Man, you're down in Georgia. What's this lion business?
Let's get back, because we're going to be starting to lose people.
He's talking because Jesus is the lion and we follow the lion.
Are you sure?
No, he's not.
All right. So David Barnes says, our own brethren are getting... Why are they using this word? I'm having a hard time saying this word.
Denominationalized.
All right, I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay.
Good job. All right. And that is true, Brother Barnes. More and more, the Lord's people are becoming more like these heresies.
I came out of one of these.
And more like these sects, huh?
You're making fun of me for being like the Lord.
Yeah. My brain is going faster than my mouth can go. So here's Titus 3:10. Here's another passage speaking of these divisions and how they are in fact wrong and evil. A man that is a heretic, one that causes a heresy or causes a schism, after the first and second admonition, you reject that man. You don't keep him around. You don't keep him in fellowship. He's causing a break. So we have all of these divisions, all of these heretics around us. The Bible, God, says that there should not be any of these divisions, and yet Dr. Nace wants to try to defend these. All right, that's fine if you want to try to defend it, but I believe you're going to have a really hard time in doing that. Now, some might reply at this point by saying, well, if what you're presenting is true, then you're saying that millions of people will be lost.
Millions.
Well, that is a very sad reality. It does not bring us any joy to have to confess that and admit that, but even Jesus said that many people are going to find the broad way, and that broad way leads to destruction, and it's only going to be a few that find that narrow way. But even as we're discussing this idea of, well, how is it that millions of people could be lost? I mean, so do you have that same shock when you're reading Genesis 6 through 9 and everyone in the world was being killed but 8 people that were on the ark? And that's not the only time where you have a huge host of people that end up being slain. I mean, in Genesis chapter 19, you have the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and only Lot and his 2 daughters made it out. That's 2 cities that were completely destroyed by God. And that included Lot's wife. She disobeyed God, and she looked back on the city, and she's turned into a pillar of salt. So even with God's own people, he expects them and requires them to follow what he says. Just do what he says. And that's how easy this is going to be. You can live. So here's what Dr. Nace tries to do next. He tries to lay out a syllogism, an argument, so as to build his case. He says the argument is as follows. If we can, in principle, now, I have no issue with using principle in teaching because in a lot of ways that's how the Bible teaches us things. And especially in the New Testament. The New Testament does not give us a whole list like in the Old Testament of thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do this. A lot of it is being taught in principle. But when it comes to matters like this, in that we are trying to get very specific and very minute with our definition and with our argumentation, we need to go a step further than just simply principle. So he says, if we can in principle refer to the way as a denomination, then Jesus also condones denominations that adhere to the essential doctrines of Christianity. We can, in principle, refer to the way as a denomination. Therefore, Jesus also condones denominations that adhere to the essential doctrines of Christianity. Now, it's been a long time since I've been in logic class, but I'm pretty sure this is not how you're supposed to build a syllogism. when we're considering this idea,
Brent should call in.
what is it?
Brent should call in. She knows syllogism and goodness.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, if she wants to, phone numbers are up. So when we're looking at his argumentation, we're dealing with some of the, the same topics that we've dealt with in the past. One of the first things I want to look at or take note of is this these denominations that adhere to the essential doctrines of Christianity. What are these essential doctrines? I've yet to hear from any preacher here in town as to what is essential and what is non-essential points.
They say baptism isn't an essential point, so
exactly.
we got that one down.
But yet baptism, and specifically water baptism, is mentioned throughout Matthew, throughout Mark, is mentioned throughout Luke, it's even mentioned throughout John. You go into Acts, the history of the church being started and how that began. It began with 3,000 souls being baptized and being added to the Lord's church. Throughout the book of Acts, you're reading about conversions, and there's baptism. So while they are making these statements about, well, these are the essential things, well, as I go through my Bible and I see what Jesus commanded his apostles to go out and to teach to the world so as to make disciples, he doesn't start doing this, this issue of, well, here's the essentials that you need to teach, and, these non-essentials don't have to worry about. Jesus said to his apostles in Matthew 28:20, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. Well, Jesus taught about a lot of things while he was here on the earth. So it sounds like Jesus is putting an essential mark on all that he taught. So where do we get to step in and start deciding, well, this is essential, this is not essential? We don't get to do that. And what's included in that essential point, all things whatsoever I've commanded you, is Mark 16, 15, and 16, baptism that we were just talking about. He said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Okay, what are we going to teach, Jesus? He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. So here's an essential part. But yet we have teachers and preachers today telling us, no, baptism's not an essential part. Let's just search the scriptures, friends. Let's just stick with what it says. And where do you really want to be? Do you want to be in the NFL or do you want to be in the CFL? You have you have your choice. One is more prestigious than the other. Well, we're both playing football. Yeah, you may be playing football, but I know who's in the NFL. I don't know who's in the CFL. There's your difference. And especially when it comes to God. Yeah, you've got your choices out there, but which one is God going to recognize? It's the one that's going to be found in teaching all things. Now, here's an interesting point about teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. Did Jesus teach about the church while he was here?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
I'm pretty sure I read in a book somewhere
about
his kingdom.
So guess what is included in that teaching them to observe all things part?
The church.
About the church.
All of his denominations.
that are nowhere mentioned in the New Testament. So here, let's go back to his argument now, after dealing with the essential points. This whole situation of, well, if we can, in principle, and ultimately what he's saying is if we can assume that the way refers to a denomination. And that's not how this goes. You can assume anything. That does not make it true. You've not proven anything at this level. That's like if we were to say, if we can, in principle, say that the moon is made of cheese, and then this scientist, he condones those who believe the moon is made of cheese.
Fauci. Well,
we can, in principle, say the moon is made of cheese. Therefore, this scientist also condones people that adhere to the moon being made of cheese. So,
therefore,
that means the moon is made out of cheese.
Now, what kind of cheese?
Well, that's not essential. Just as long as we agree that's made out of cheese.
Okay.
But of course, everybody knows it's pepper jack. So if we're looking at this from the standpoint, and that's how Dr. Nace is starting his article. It's off of an assumption. But we need to go to evidence. Bring me the evidence as to where the church that's in the Bible, because there is a church in the Bible, and you're needing to prove to me how that church is a division or a heresy. So simply giving out the syllogism, which of course syllogism doesn't prove anything within itself. You've now got to bring about evidence so as to prove that. But going a step further, in removing this idea about divisions being okay, before Jesus went to the cross to die for the sins of the world, here's what he's praying. Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word. So there's emphasis being put back onto the teaching and the preaching, the word that he was going to send them out with. That they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. Did Jesus teach anything different than what the Father wanted him to teach? No. They were in complete harmony. What the Father wanted Jesus to give, Jesus gave. So if we're going to be followers of Jesus, what he teaches, we must give without any adulteration, without any alteration, without any deduction. You have just simply got to give what the Master says to give. And in doing that, we will all be one. So the problem is that you have all these different people teaching all these different things, confusing people, that deception that's coming in that Dr. Nace mentioned about in his New Year's sermon. You got to watch out for that. You cannot have those things going on and then try to turn around and claim that you're in fact, let me get my laser pointer here, that you're in fact one, that you're together. And the glory which thou gavest me, I have given them that they may be one, even as we are one. There is supposed to be unity in the church. And if we're all going to be that one church, if we're all going to be playing in that one league, the NFL, then guess what? We're not going to have any problems because everybody's following the same rules. Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about going to one stadium and the field being 50 yards longer than your home stadium. It's just like, what are we doing here? You're supposed to be in the league with us. You're supposed to be following the rules. Well, no. We're in the league with you, but we just want to have a longer field. That sounds like CFL stuff, not NFL stuff. Are we catching the analogy here so I can stop saying NFL, CFL? I'm pretty sure we might get flagged for that. So here's what we deal with first. First, what even is a denomination? I would say that a denomination is any body of believers of the biblical Jesus who are in agreement with essential doctrines of Christianity. Now, show me that definition from the scriptures. Mm-hmm. Mormonism, for instance, is not included in what we call Christian denominations simply because they do not agree with the essential doctrines of historical Christianity. Historically speaking, modern denominations came from the division of Protestantism and Catholicism. And he goes on to quote Roger Olson. Friends,
not Jesus Christ.
Right. So, friends, here are words that are actually being used that are now being used synonymously with denomination. So now he's indirectly piecing these things together. Before, when he starts out, he's wanting to say, oh no, denominations aren't a division. We're still in this Christianity bubble. We're still under this umbrella. But now he starts using the terms correctly that really define what a denomination is. And that is a division. You cannot have, where'd it go? You cannot have division, or here it is. You cannot have division inside of Christianity. Jesus prayed against it. Paul preached against it. And he sent out Timothy in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 to teach in all the churches the same thing that he taught in every church. You see, you didn't have all these different groups. You did not have these divisions in the first century where, okay, I've got to go over here and teach this doctrine. I've got to go over here and teach this other doctrine. You're all being taught the same thing because we only have one master. We only have one teacher. And we only have one book. But even as we're thinking, so before I go into some of my points, anything you guys have in here that you're wanting to look at that's problematic?
I don't know, there's like little things that pop up, but my mind's like, I'm listening, but my mind's not engaging in like any of those little things. There's no end to like what I'm saying, so.
Well, when I had my, Catholic just got in my head. Calvinist friend, when I had my Calvinist friend, he would go back and he kept referring to the Catholics, and he kept referring to them. So I finally had to ask him, do you think that the Catholics were the first church? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, then why aren't you Catholic? Right. And so Nace is doing the same thing. He says, historically speaking, modern denominations came from the division of Protestantism and Catholicism. So we don't believe this, but going based on them, Catholicism was the first, and so all these splits, the 40,000 to 50,000 different denominations, came from this war, which, are we about to read Roger Olson?
Yeah, we're going to read it. Yep.
Okay, so coming up, he's going to explain this about Luther and all that stuff, but it's like, why aren't you trying to go back to Catholicism if that is what, why are you saying that it's okay to branch off of this when it's Catholicism? That's what you should be trying to get back to and trying to get as close as you can to. Who gave you, the prodigal son story where you get the ring, you get the credit card, you get to come back in and you get to just, who gave you the authority to say, well, we are allowed to make anything we want based on the essential doctrines? I asked my same Calvinist friend that, okay, if I wanted to go based on, day five, God made the fish, right, and the sea creatures, if I wanted to go and I wanted to make a whale church to where the floors had to be, an aquarium floor with killer whales in it, because I love killer whales and I want Green Day as the band there worshiping with me. Can I do that and be the 40,001 denomination? He said, yeah, I guess, because I base it off of day five. Who gave them, why is this okay? Historically speaking, modern denominations came from the division of this. It's like, no. Why, Nace, are you not trying to get everybody back to Catholicism? No. Catholicism is wrong. We're supposed to get away from that. So that's why we have to get away from that. But then we come in, we're like, no, there was another. So anyways, that was my whole point.
My wife puts into the chat, who determines what the essential doctrines are? On what Dr. Nace is saying. Who determines what the essential doctrines are? So everyone's going, believe in Christ, faith alone, saved by grace alone, all these things. Who determines what the essentials are, is her comment. So I had something on top of Jordan's thing, is the Catholicism, if it's good and pure and set by God, and Jesus says, it blanked. It's God that brings everything as good, everything as perfect. So if that Catholicism is where it's at, like Jordan's saying, why are we splitting away from Catholicism?
And they would even admit that, okay, well, we don't go back to Roman Catholicism because we'll look at the problems that Roman Catholicism has. Okay, so you're admitting that even with what we're talking about, you have to go beyond, you have to go past Roman Catholicism, because you're admitting, okay, well, this is a division. Well, what's a division from? Mm-hmm. There was something there before it, if it's got all of these problems. So one of the things that jumped out at me in his wording is, I would say that a denomination is any body of believers. Mm-hmm. But yet when I read my Bible, there's only one body. Why is he giving the idea as though there's a multitude of different bodies that are out here, and especially being different kinds of bodies?
Because of what he's about to do with the way.
Right.
Yeah.
But Mormons aren't, for instance, not included. It's like anybody. Mormons, no.
Well, and he would go so far as say Jehovah's Witnesses too. But here's the tone that's being set. I would say, well, nobody's asking for what you would say. That's where we are in John chapter 4 with the woman at the well. Well, our fathers say we worship in this mountain, and you say we need to worship in Jerusalem. You're arguing this the wrong way. It doesn't matter what your fathers say, and even for that matter, she didn't know Jesus as being the Messiah. If Jesus was just some other man, it doesn't matter what Jesus says. What does God say on the matter? And that's the element that's being left out of this. I'm not interested in what Dr. Nace would say. Let's look at the actual scriptures here. And even as we're thinking about this historically speaking, why aren't we speaking about this biblically? Why aren't you able just to start out going to the Bible and laying it out? Where's the denomination? Where's the division? Where's the heresy that is okay? Where's the schism? Where's the break that God actually says is fine? Now, when it comes to those that are not going to uphold the doctrine, Romans 16:17, anyone come that does not hold this doctrine, mark him and avoid him. So there's a division that's needing to take place, but it's a division from the fact that you're not teaching what God says you're supposed to teach. And then that person or that group does not get to go out and start their own entity as being recognized as, well, yeah, you're one of us. No, you're out there on the outskirts. You're in darkness here, while we're over here in light. So let's move on to Roger Olson's quote. The Protestant Reformation revolutionized Western Christianity. From 1520 on, no single church has existed to unify Western society, and in that sense, Christendom died. The medieval synthesis of the one church headquartered in Rome ceased to exist. The era of denominationalism was ushered in against Luther's own wishes. He had no intention of dividing Christendom. His own theology did not advocate splitting the church up into warring or mutually ignoring factions. It happened nevertheless. Gradually, over the decades and centuries, Western Christianity splintered and Protestantism took on ever new forms. That doesn't sound like anything worth defending.
No.
That all sounds really, really terrible. Now, I understand the break that was needing to happen from Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism was terrible. Is still terrible. But in going off from Roman, well, that's the thing with Martin Luther. Martin Luther really was not wanting to break from Roman Catholicism. He was just simply wanting to reform it. Change some things about it. He still very much wanted to keep holding on to a lot of Roman Catholic practices. Mm-hmm. But here's what ended up coming out of it. You have this splitting the church up. That is what denominationalism is. That is the division that's being produced. And it's bringing about warring and mutually ignoring factions. And this is what has happened. And you're wanting to say that's a good thing? And it's not just Dr. Nace. I've been involved in door knocking in different areas and come into contact with different people that are involved in heresies, and they've tried to say to me, well, yeah, all these divisions that we have, that's actually a good thing. You have all these different groups, and they're trying to find their own way to God. And that is a completely backwards idea from what Jesus ever intended. He was calling his people to be brought into the one fold, where he was going to be the one shepherd, the one leader. And yet we've got all these sheep that are supposedly scattered out in all these different places, and we're supposed to look at that and say that it's good. Western Christianity, splintered. That's not a good thing. Yeah. That is not a good thing. But yet Dr. Nace is trying to defend it. One can see that there is a separation from Catholicism and that Luther never intended to ignite a storm. This is what appears to have happened, however, as we can look back through history and see the aftermath from the explosion of separating from Rome. In its first generation, Protestant Christian theology, whereas Protestant Christian in the scriptures, or even their theology, existed in 4 distinct branches. All 4 still exist, but even they have divided within themselves. So we have divisions within divisions within divisions within divisions, getting further and further away from each other.
It's like how they tax our money.
Hey, but yet this is supposed to be a good thing. So he says all 4 exist even though they've divided within themselves. The 4 were and are Lutheran, or evangelical in German, Reformed, the Swiss to Luther, Anabaptist. And I have this underlined because we're going to look at them here in just a minute. The Anabaptist considered the major part of the Radical Reformation, and Anglican, the Church of England. Each had its own distinct emphasis that differed from the others, while all shared the 3 main Protestant principles: sola gratia et fide, salvation by grace through faith alone; sola scriptura, scripture above all other authorities for Christian faith and practice; and the priesthood of all believers. Now, as we start bringing this to a close, this is a good place for us to bring this section to an end as we move further into Dr. Nace's article next week. Here is a reason why you need to be ready to listen, but then searching things out. Because a lot of people have the wrong idea when it comes to this group of people called Anabaptist. And it's a funny situation because everybody throughout all these religious divisions, everybody wants to try to claim the Anabaptist. Mm-hmm. The Baptists try to claim them. The Pentecostals try to claim them. The Methodists try to claim them as being part of their group. And now here we have, Dr. Nace trying to include them into like this Protestant Reformation and movement. But if you go back and you actually study the history of the Anabaptists, and this is actually coming from the Baptist Confession of Faith by Lumpkin. This is a book that's readily available. You can still find it online. Actually, I think you can actually read this in PDF form online, just to double check what we're going to present to you tonight, that these Anabaptists were not involved in this Protestant Reformation. And a clue to that is because Dr. Nace even calls them a radical group. Well, here's the reason why they were so radical. On page 153, we have a London Confession in 1644. And this is the confession of faith of those churches which are commonly, though falsely, called Anabaptist. So here's our group that we are supposedly talking about, that Dr. Nace is saying, well, they're actually part of this radical group within the Protestant movement. But even they are claiming in their own confession of faith, no. We're called Anabaptists, but that's not who we are. Presented to the view of all that fear God, to examine by the touchstone of the word of truth, as likewise for taking off those oppressions which are frequently both in pulpit and print, although unjustly cast upon them. So that's page 153. You head over here on 153, go to the bottom of the page, and we start seeing some footnotes that are down here. So here's the London Confession printed by Matthew Simmons in Aldersgate Street, 1644. Now, when is it that the Church of Christ supposedly came into existence in the Americas?
1644.
Nope.
Man, 1618 is when he was born, right?
Yeah.
So 30 years past that.
So supposedly with the Campbells around in the 1800s is when the Church of Christ began. But we're going to see from actual history, 1644 in London, we had this confession of faith, and we get down here in the footnote, and here's the footnote blown up even bigger over here. And let me see if I can, what am I doing? Let me see if I can zoom in here just a little bit. There, a little bit more. Here's what you have actually being written. The title page of edition of the 1646 Confession of Faith reads this way. So 1644, they're falsely called Anabaptist. 1646, here's how it's being written. A confession of faith of 7 congregations or churches of Christ in London, which are commonly but unjustly called Anabaptist. Published for the vindication of the truth and information of the ignorant. Likewise, for the taking off of the aspersions, which are frequently both in pulpit and print unjustly cast upon us. Friends, this is why you have got to be involved. Whoa. You have got to be involved in your own research, because our historians are not doing us justice. Dr. Nace would want you to believe, and I don't think that he knows this about Lumpkins, but Dr. Nace would present information, and falsely, possibly not intentionally. I don't think he's necessarily doing it intentionally, but it still is false information. He's giving you false information about this group called Anabaptist, when in reality, these are actually churches of Christ in 1644. And you read further in Lumpkin's book, and guess what they're teaching as what scriptures that they're using in their plan of salvation. Matthew 16:18, Mark 16:15 and 16, Acts 2:38, the conversion accounts throughout the book of Acts where baptism is mentioned. They are using the same scriptures that we are using today. Why is that? Because they're the same group. And they had no affiliation, they had no connection with any of the other Protestant groups. That's why they're writing this information, is because these Protestant groups are casting spurs at them, whether it's in the pulpit or it's in print, and now here they are, and they're making a defense for themselves. You have got to be careful as to what information people are giving to you, whether it's intentional or unintentional, because either way, it's going to do a great deal of harm. There are tons of people out there that think, oh yeah, the Anabaptists, they're just a group of the Baptists. No, the reason why they're being called Anabaptists is because these individuals it actually means to be baptized again. They were rebaptizers, because they were taking people that were being baptized as children, pedo-Baptists, and converting them and baptizing them in the correct way as grown adults and as believers of the truth. And that's how they got this title. Friends, when we are looking at this information, so Dr. Nace is saying, well, we need to view this historically. All right, if we're going to do this historically, then let's really tell history like it is. Here's the Church of Christ back here in 1644, and they're in London, and they're fighting the same kind of fight that we're fighting today.
Minus the broadcast.
Yeah, minus the broadcast. We need to remove these divisions, get back to the truth of God's word. What you got?
I want to make a correction. So Alexander Campbell was born 1788, September 12th, which is my anniversary. So he was born way after this. And then his dad was even 1763. So way after. And then he didn't even come to America till 1809.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Anyways, I said what I said. I thought he was born then, but he's not. He came to America then.
Right. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you for that correction. So, friends, when we're thinking about this and we're looking at Dr. Nace's information, I understand how difficult this can be. I mean, did you guys even know this book existed?
What book?
Not until I met you.
Okay. So it's just like when we're thinking about this, how am I even supposed to keep up with all these different books and all these different writings of history? You're really not needing to. All you really need to keep up with are the scriptures. Stick with the scriptures, and you're going to have the truth. What this does is it just further cements the truth for us. That, in fact, these people did exist. The Church of Christ was already in existence, and they were not a part of this movement. They were radicals inside of the movement because they're not baptizing children. And anybody that was baptized as a child, they are baptizing them correctly, and that for the remission of their sins. These individuals, they viewed water baptism as the point, the element in which God forgave a person's sins. So for anybody that would try to say about the Church of Christ, well, your denomination, just like everybody else, you were starting at this point. No. False. Restudy your history and do not try to rewrite this history. So he goes on to say this is interesting because it reveals the modern historical nature of denominations. Well, what about viewing these things biblically? Our history does not help us when it comes to the idea of these divisions. Because if you're looking at history, well, these divisions have always been here. So to view it historically is like, oh, well, it's normal. But if you view it from the Bible, this is not normal. Having 40,000 plus different ways of teaching one book is not an idea that is found in Scripture. So then he goes on to say, what if, however, we were to go back further in history? And that's exactly what we would like to do. Perhaps we could look at what the Bible describes in the book of Acts. Hey, we would love to do that. Just like Paul gets a lot of his arguments from Scripture, the apostles of Christ got the name of their body of believers from a description of Christ. The way.
The way.
What is interesting to note at this point is that the Church of Christ, who claim to be the one true church, does not call themselves the way, but the Church of Christ. Now, friends, we just don't have time. That's where we're going to pick up next week. In view of what he then tries to do, which if we're thinking about this logically and we're thinking about this from the realm of fallacies, which I've been doing my study with the fallacy detective here. Good little book. I actually got that from Jason Burrow from his library.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it there, buddy. This is one of the best descriptions of a red herring that you could ever find. That you're just throwing something in there that has nothing to do with what you're even talking about and trying to use it as though it's a point for you. But as we look at this next week, we're going to find out, that which proves too much proves nothing at all. And that if what you're saying here, Dr. Nace, is true, well, then it's actually got a lot of condemnation for you, as it would with us. So you guys got any closing thoughts on this section of his article?
No.
There's too much to say.
There is.
There's way too much to say, even about what we just went over. It's just overwhelming.
Well, we're not wanting it to be overwhelming, but that's the difficult part in trying to squeeze everything into an hour. Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll go to the chat real quick before we leave here tonight. Let's see here.
Wow.
Yeah. So Jeremy Ferguson says millions will be saved as well. And, that is true when you're thinking about what Jesus says, that many find the way of destruction, but few will find the straight and narrow path. If we're viewing this from the standpoint of all history, those saints that died under the Old Testament system, died in faith, waiting for the coming Messiah, those in the first century who believed in the one true Messiah, and then even with people that have gone, as time has gone on today, yeah, it's going to be a lot of people, but it's still not going to be as much as what it, like, in comparison, as we've made in our evangelism class, looking at Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost and 3,000 souls were saved, that sounds like a really big number, but when you then align that or contrast that to the millions of people that were there on the day of Pentecost, it ends up coming to less than 1% of the people there in Jerusalem that actually obeyed the gospel. So yeah, there's going to be a lot, but contrasted to the many that are going to be lost, it's not even going to be, be a drop in the bucket. Yeah.
But I think the point is they're trying to say, well, you brought up the point that, well, 1 million people are going to be lost and people are always looking to the negative. It's like, no. We are also going to have a bunch of people on God's side when we get to heaven. It's like, just don't lose faith. Keep pushing forward with what Jesus began to teach, to do and teach.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. The Mitch says, no evidence, no conviction. That's a big point and definitely a true point. Man, if you don't have any evidence, you don't have any foundation, you've got nothing to stand on. So that creates a lot of people.
It's sin.
Yeah, creates a lot of people without conviction.
I like his smiley face.
Yeah, put a smiley emoji there. David Barnes, the only way to make divisions equate to unity is to redefine the terms, and that's exactly what we're dealing with. We have a change in definitions. We're not speaking the same language, and that was a problem that Old Testament Israel had. They ended up speaking the half speech of Ashdod, which is idolatry. Can't do that kind of stuff. Jeremy Ferguson, Anabaptist, is really popular on Twitter. What a mess. I think I might need to check that out. Don't know what's going on there. Mitch also then says the Protestant celebration of the Catholic holiday shows their confusion level. Absolutely. And the fact that so many of their religious organizations still dress like the Roman Catholics do, their hierarchy, their priests and their fathers and all that kind of stuff, the way their buildings look, the way their services are set up, a lot of it is still very much attached to that thing that you're supposedly saying, oh, no, we're protesting that. Well, then why are you still doing it? It's like, that would be like our founding fathers and the revolutionaries, like, yeah, we're protesting the tea, but we're still going to sip over here. No, they threw that stuff out.
Or put on red coats.
Right, yeah, you don't do that kind of stuff, but they're still involved in it. So that's a good point. Bring out their confusion. Oh. Jeremy Ferguson again, they get baptized aging, but they still say it's not essential. The one I talked to is a faith alone guy. Oh, I see. So it's some Baptists trying to take the term Anabaptist, not even realizing what Anabaptist was about. Jeremy Ferguson then says, the Anabaptist I know, he was baptized twice, but he says baptism is not essential to salvation and believes in faith alone and says he has the Holy Ghost. So again, just here's this person in this one group, and he's got these ideas. He's holding to this form of doctrine, but then that's different from the Baptist down the street.
Yep.
So there's division within the division within the division, which is what Dr. Nace quoted in his article. David Barnes he puts in here Acts 4:32, and the multitude of them that believed were of one heart, one soul. Neither said any of them that aught of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had all things common. So there with the first century church in the book of Acts, here's this unity. One heart, one mind, one soul being brought together. Rob Trevino says, great episode. Thank you, Brother Rob.
Thank you
for that. Jeremy Ferguson, also the United States has almost 1 million abortions a year for quite a while. That's who I'm counting. Okay, I kind of figured that's where he was heading. Yep. So all those souls that have been taken out of this world going to be on that other side. And Maurice Brown says, Satan has been very successful in creating all this religious division for hundreds of years, and countless souls will be lost as a result. That is true, and even Dr. Nace would approve of that point, as we heard in the sermon. There's a lot of deception. There's a lot of vain words and empty words out there that need to be corrected, because you have people that are holding on to these false ideas and thinking they're going to escape hell, but they're not going to. So we need to deal with these. We need to talk about these. We need to sit down and study them. And so that's what we're offering with our Bible studies, this broadcast, and any time that you see us out and about, come up and talk to us, and we'll have some Bible conversation with you. Anything on that?
Nope.
All right, then. If nothing else, after reading the chat, then we go to our outro.
We had one more thing to say.
No. Oh, yeah, that's right. All right. Thank you for reminding me. That's good. Let's go backwards here. One quick thing. I need to find it. Give me just a second. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, 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 dun,
Dun, dun.
All right. So, how do I do this? Is that it? Nope. Is that it? Nope.
It's your party.
Okay. I'm just going to have to go the long way. I thought I could skip all of it, but no, we're going to have to go. Ow, no. My brain was somewhere else. My brain was ready to go home.
You are home.
We want to go
That was
man. Funny.
All right. So, as been our habit here lately, we've been saying happy birthday to different members that we have. And your dad's birthday is tomorrow.
Yeah, 57.
Nice.
We forgot to say happy birthday to Mom, but she's old too. So happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday to Jamie. Happy birthday to Adrian. And we had a baptism in the beginning of January, the beginning of this year. Adrian Albert being pictured here, being baptized into Christ for the remission of his sins on, that was the 6th, right? January the 6th?
Yeah, January the 6th.
The worst day in
America's
Oh,
history.
yeah.
So,
Insurrection Day.
Yeah, so we made a...
We're going to get flagged for that
Yeah,
one.
no joke. All right.
Yeah, so
So-
that happened. So spiritual birthday last week, but continue to
Physical
get-
birthday.
Yeah, physical birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday, Dadrin.
Yeah. Hope it's a good one, which it should be. My wife gave him 2 apple pies today, so.
Nice.
Wow.
Celebrating hard.
All right, so now
You
can
can
we
go
go
home now. You
All
go
right,
home
now.
now,
Can I go
Micah.
home? All right, thanks. So this has been a live episode of the Back to the Bible broadcast, Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. YouTube and Facebook sometimes, if we can get that working. If you're in the local area, come out and be with us at the Ronan VFW Hall Sundays, 10 a.m. for Bible class. We're in the book of John chapter 4, and our worship assembly is after that. If you're not able to be with us, be sure to like and follow our Facebook page. We live stream our sermons. We share other brethren's good, sound, biblical information over there, so be sure to go and like and follow that. We have a YouTube channel for the Church of Christ of Lake County. We upload our classes to this YouTube channel. Today, we were in John chapter 4, so if you want to study that with us, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and it should be uploaded tomorrow for you to study. Our Matthew class is over there, 1 Corinthians, Proverbs, and anything that we move into in the future will be there. We do have an Instagram page, but that's just advertisement for the broadcast, episodes that we're doing, and our contact information. You can email us at churchofchristoflakecounty@gmail.com, cofcoftlakecounty@gmail.com. Questions, comments. There's a topic you'd like for us to dive into. Somebody actually, so it's David Barnes. He gave us a potential topic for us to dive into after we get done with Dr. Nace's information, so we appreciate that. You can also call us. We have our phone numbers here, because if you want to call and ask us a question, we're open for that. My phone number is 434-429-5221.
406-499-1745.
406-241-4667.
Our Facebook Messenger is open. That's actually where David got in contact with me about that topic. So you can Facebook message us, you can text us, you can call us, email, comment sections are open on all of our channels.
Pigeons, whatever.
Yeah, smoke signals, just whatever you got to do. Morse code. Get it to us. We want to have this dialogue. We want to have this back and forth, and especially with people that are going to be reasonable, people that are wanting to learn, people that are wanting to then hear what we have to say, but
noble-minded.
Yeah, noble-minded, going back and searching the scriptures. That's what this all comes back to. So, fellas, thank you for being here tonight once again.
Thank you.
Thank you to all those that were in the chat giving comment and dialogue for the episode. We really do appreciate it. It helps, it helps grow the channel when that kind of interaction is going on. So we definitely do appreciate it. And there's some really good thoughts, really good points in the comments tonight. So again, thank you for being with us. Hope you've enjoyed our time of study together. Have a great rest of your evening. And until next time, take care. God bless.